everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at, how the term fake news gets thrown around so much these days. And it can be used to push any agenda, really. We've got a great example of that today from the Next News Network. And just to give you a taste, this is the title of the piece we're diving into today. CNN is finished. What Trump did to Don Lemon late last night will ruin him. MP3.
Wow. That's, that's quite a statement.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold claim, right? And the piece is actually a response to a CNN segment where Don Lemon and one of his guests, they kind of go head-to-head over how much it costs to protect the president, with Secret Service and all that. So the commentator on the Next News Network is saying that this segment from CNN is like a perfect example of them just pushing fake news, and they use it to just go on this whole attack on CNN.
Huh. So it sounds like they're taking this one specific example and using it to kind of discredit CNN as a whole.
Yeah, basically. And it doesn't stop there. They go on to say that Trump has basically single-handedly ruined CNN.
Yeah.
They say. They even use CNN's declining ratings and this recent lawsuit against them as proof.
Okay.
But I think what's really interesting here is how they use this one segment, this one little interaction, to try and paint this much bigger picture of, the downfall of CNN.
Right. It's like they're trying to make it seem like this huge trend when it might just be, one isolated incident.
Exactly. So let's actually break down what happens in the CNN segment. So Don Lemon and his guest, Paris Swade, they're talking about the cost of protecting the president. And as you can imagine, things get a little heated.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, it's a pretty hot topic these days. It'll be interesting to hear how they each frame the issue.
Yeah. Let's take a listen. This is the clip.
Okay.
So, pretty tense exchange, right? What stood out to you?
Well, they were both pretty frustrated. I mean, you could hear it in their voices. But what's interesting is how they're both using the term fake news, but in totally different ways.
Yeah, it's almost like they're talking past each other. Lemon seems to be using fake news to describe information that he thinks is intentionally misleading.
Right.
And then Swade is using it more broadly to basically dismiss anything he doesn't agree with.
It just goes to show how loaded that term has become.
Right. It's almost lost all meaning at this point because people use it so differently.
Yeah.
So the commentator on the Next News Network, they really latch onto this back and forth. They're saying that Lemon cutting the segment short is proof that he was busted and that he just couldn't handle being called out for pushing fake news.
Oh, so they're spinning it as like Lemon got caught or something.
Yeah, it's like they think they got him.
I mean, things happen on live TV.
Right.
Sometimes you have to cut things short.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, for all kinds of reasons. And here's how the commentator reacts to Lemon ending the segment.
Okay, yeah.
So you can practically hear the commentator like, woo.
Yeah, and it's interesting the language they're using, like busted and ran away. It's very deliberate.
It is. It makes Lemon sound like,
well,
dishonest and cowardly, which feeds right into that narrative they're trying to build, that CNN is untrustworthy.
Exactly. They're trying to paint this picture of him like he's running away from the truth.
Right. And they don't stop there. The commentator brings up this recent lawsuit against CNN, and they use it as even more proof that the network is dishonest.
Oh, wow.
They say that CNN was sued for providing fake news, and that a federal judge ruled that the network had peddled falsehoods in their reporting about some hospital CEO. They make it sound like a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but legal rulings can be pretty complicated.
It's true.
Just because a judge ruled against CNN in one case doesn't mean the whole network is guilty of spreading fake news all the time.
That's a good point. It seems like they're really cherry-picking information here to fit their narrative.
Yeah.
Speaking of narratives, there's another layer to this whole thing that I find really interesting.
Oh.
So at the very end of the video, after spending all this time going after CNN and fake news, the commentator pivots to selling their own line of health supplements.
What?
I know, right?
That's pretty wild.
It makes you wonder if this whole critique of CNN was just a way to get people to watch their video and then sell them something completely unrelated.
Right. It's like they're using this controversy to make money.
Exactly, which kind of makes you question their whole motivation.
Yeah. It's like, are they really concerned about fake news?
Right.
Or are they just trying to sell supplements?
You're right. It's hard to tell.
It is.
So where does that leave us? As people trying to make sense of all this information, we're bombarded with accusations of fake news from all sides.
Yeah, it's tough.
How are we supposed to know what to believe?
Like we're drowning in information.
Yeah. And it's so easy to get stuck in these echo chambers where you only hear opinions that you already agree with.
Right.
So how do we break out of that?
Well, one thing you can do is diversify your media diet.
What do you mean by that?
Don't just get your news from one place.
Okay.
Try to get information from different sources, even sources you might not agree with. Read different newspapers. Watch different news channels. Get a variety of perspectives.
That makes sense. But how do you know which sources to trust? There are so many websites and social media accounts out there, all claiming to have the truth.
It's true. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
You have to be careful.
So what should we be looking for?
Well, think of it like being a detective.
Okay.
You gather evidence and piece together the story yourself.
So how do we do that?
Look for sources that have a good track record.
Like,
Sources that are known for being accurate and fair.
okay.
Be wary of websites or social media accounts that use sensationalized headlines or emotionally charged language.
Right. So basically anything that seems over the top.
Yeah. And always check for evidence.
Evidence.
Yeah. Make sure the claims they're making are actually backed up by facts.
So it's not just about what's being said, but also who's saying it. And why they might be saying it.
Right.
We need to be aware of their biases.
Yes.
And our own biases, too.
Absolutely.
Our own biases can really affect how we see things.
They can.
So it sounds like critical thinking is really important here.
It's crucial.
We can't just take everything at face value.
Right.
We have to question everything.
Exactly.
Analyze the information carefully.
And don't just blindly accept what you hear.
This has been really eye-opening.
It has.
We started by looking at one opinion piece, and now we're talking about the whole landscape of media and fake news.
A big topic.
It is, and it's made me realize how important it is to be an active participant in this whole information process.
Right.
We can't just sit back and passively consume information anymore.
We have to be engaged in a world where fake news is everywhere.
How can we have productive conversations about important issues?
That's a good question.
Especially when people seem to be coming from such different places.
It's definitely a challenge.
It is.
But I think the key is to be willing to listen.
Listen to other people's perspectives.
Even if you disagree with them.
So
even if you think they're wrong.
Try to understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
And be open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
It's about being open-minded.
Yeah. And realizing that people can have different beliefs without being bad people.
Right.
Or intentionally trying to spread misinformation.
It's about giving people the benefit of the doubt.
This whole conversation has really highlighted the importance of media literacy. It's not just about being informed.
It's about being able to navigate this crazy information landscape.
And make sense of it all.
Exactly.
It's a skill we all need to develop.
It is.
God.
So we wrap up this deep dive.
What's the one thing you hope people take away from this?
I hope people remember to never stop questioning. Everything. Question the information you see. Question the sources. Question your own beliefs. Never stop seeking the truth.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Even if it challenges your worldview.
That's a great takeaway.
Thanks.
I think this episode has shown us that the truth can be found in some pretty unexpected places.
Like a fiery commentary from the next news network.
Exactly. We might not have found the truth they were trying to convey, but we found a truth nonetheless.
That we did.
It really has been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It has.
And we've learned a lot along the way.
Definitely.
And who knew we'd be talking about health supplements in the middle of all this?
Yeah, that was a surprise.
But I think it just goes to show that you can't always take things at face value. You have to look deeper and ask yourself, what's the real motivation here?
Exactly.
Because sometimes it's not what it seems.
Like with that commentator, it seemed like they were really concerned about fake news.
Right.
But then they just started trying to sell us supplements.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what their real agenda was.
It does.
So, what's the biggest takeaway for you?
I think it's important to remember that we all have a responsibility to be critical thinkers.
Critical thinkers?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
We can't just passively consume information anymore.
Okay.
We have to be active participants. So to question everything.
Everything.
The information we see, the sources it comes from, and even our own beliefs.
So it's about being skeptical.
In a healthy way.
Right. Not cynical.
Exactly.
But just being aware that not everything is as it seems.
And that everyone has an agenda.
Even us.
Especially us.
So how do we do that? How do we become more critical thinkers?
Well, it takes practice.
Okay.
But one thing you can do is start asking yourself questions.
Like what kind of questions?
When you see a piece of information,
Yeah.
ask yourself, who created this?
Okay.
Why did they create it?
And
What evidence do they have to support their claims?
so basically, don't just take things at face value.
Right.
Dig a little deeper.
Exactly.
This deep dive has really made me think about how I consume information,
It's made me more aware
of my own biases.
and of the biases of others.
It's like we're all just trying to make sense of the world.
We are.
And sometimes we get things wrong.
It happens.
But that's okay, as long as we're willing to learn and grow.
And to keep questioning.
Exactly. Never stop questioning.
That's the key.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of fake news and media criticism.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, keep questioning everything.
Stay curious.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.